I'll make this an unlisted video, so if you're watching it, it means that you're part of my core audience. And I would like to say that I really do appreciate you people that keep coming back and watching. I know I'm a bit eccentric and probably just downright weird, and I really do appreciate that there are people out there interested in the fact that I go through so much trouble on a lot of these videos. But I guess I'll show you how this marking gauge works and a couple other random things I have around here. It starts off with these two brass fittings, and this one is threaded into this piece of wood. And inside, where the magic takes place, is this piece of rubber. I don't know what it's from. And then this PVC sleeve, and then a brass washer. Whoops. I'm not editing, so deal with it. And it works, I guess, like a compression fitting, where as you tighten the fitting, it smashes the rubber, which is forced to surround the 1/4-inch steel, and it gets nice and tight. Works pretty well. I honestly think they're an overrated tool, though. I don't even use it all that much. Focus. You know, I never used to talk to myself, but you kind of get used to the weirdness of talking to yourself whenever you start to make videos, because nobody's here. And here I am talking to my camera. What I need to talk to is a psychiatrist. No, what I need to do is get a new camera. Believe it or not, I'm filming this with my phone. There we go. The trick to drilling out a piece of rod like this is to just stick it right into the table. I drilled a 1/4-inch hole into the table first, and then make sure you peen the top so that the drill bit finds its way. As far as this little cutter head is concerned, it's just a machine screw. I just chucked the threaded end into a drill, and then I sharpened it from both sides. It's a pretty inexpensive and replaceable alternative to a carbide wheel. But I think my favorite feature of this thing is the fact that you can put the cutter head all the way up against this wooden block, and then it doesn't get banged around and dinged, because I have a tendency to, well, pile stuff up. Well, let's take a quick look around if you're still interested. Over there you can see the next project. I'm still working on it. It should be pretty entertaining, but I'm not going to give too much of it away. What we have over here. I just bought that press there. I very much like it. I've always wanted one of those for pressing bearings and whatever else you want to apply a tremendous amount of force into a small area. This thing, this screw caddy, is one of the handiest things ever. I highly recommend building one. And that staircase looking thing way back there in the corner, that is the biggest failure of my life. And I'm not going to tell you about it. But I will tell you about some other failures. And I bet they're here. There's a whole jar of them there. This was supposed to be a rubber band motorized car. Never finished it. Couldn't, because I couldn't find the right gear. Wooden pliers. Oh my goodness, did I fail with these. It was supposed to go with this toy, which I'll probably someday make a video about it, because I did finish these blocks. They are pretty interesting, but the concept behind this was some of them were tight, and it would pull them out. The problem was, even though I made about 3 or 4 different versions, they kept splitting. And I changed the geometry to accommodate this split several times, but it didn't matter. It was either there wasn't enough force. Oh, sorry, I got interrupted. So anyway, either the handles would hit, which I wanted, I calculated or considered that the handles should hit to limit the stress that was put on the central pin to reduce the likelihood of them splitting. So it was essentially, you had to find a balance between power of grab and you had to limit it with this somehow. But I honestly tried 4 different ways and I failed. So I came up with a different way to do it anyways. This was a wonderful failure here. This was intended to be a compass for a dry erase board. And it really works wonderfully. The adjustment is great. The marker fits. But the problem is that the rubber ball doesn't stay where it's supposed to. It slides around on the glass and it wanders, and then you end up with this thing that doesn't exactly resemble a circle. Let's see what other failures I have. Oh yeah, back there in the corner. Hold on. Okay, sorry, I know this was supposed to be impromptu, but I get carried away and I want to explain this. So let me first show you. This is just water, and I'll add some food coloring. Now, well, this process is virtually impossible without editing because I'm sure you don't have all night. But now I'm going to add some mineral oil to it. Which mineral oil is about the handiest thing around the shop. I highly recommend that you invest in some. It's really inexpensive too. I saw this on a Duresta video. He is seriously my hero. Also helps to put a little heavier duty knob. But now we can see that the mineral oil floats to the top. And we have 2 completely separate liquids. And now what happens is that the mineral oil on the top appears to change the viscosity of the water. And it gives it almost this mercury-like appearance. It just has a really good resistance to flow. So the idea was, back to this, the idea was that I would put the food coloring faded, but it didn't work anyways. The idea was that the lower portion would be a wine-colored water, and then the mineral oil on the top would make it appear as though the goblet had wine in it. And then I sealed the entire top of it with paraffin. But mineral oil is liquid paraffin, so it gradually ate into this and eroded it, and the candle was just a colossal failure. There may be some additive that you could put in the paraffin to make it more resistant to the mineral oil eating away at it, but I'm not sure of anything, so let me know if you come up with something. I thought of 2 more failures that I'd like to share with you. This one was wonderful. I don't consider it exactly a failure because I haven't given up on it yet. It's kind of a minute timer, like an hourglass, but it's 2-dimensional obviously. You fill the top with sand and then turn it upside down. And then I was going to encase the perimeter with a wooden trim like this. And I went through so many mistakes on this video that this was probably about a year ago. And I've learned quite a bit about video making in the interim, but my goodness, I failed so many different ways. I just put it on the back burner, and there's probably an hour of footage that I'm just probably never going to get around to editing. I wouldn't edit it. I would probably just start from the beginning and do the whole project over. But it has some potential, and I will include a clip of, well, it being semi-functional for those of you who are interested. It's definitely going to work. I'll calibrate it later to make it exactly a minute or 2 minutes or whatever it turns out to be. And here is the last failure that I want to show you. Chalk. Not calcium carbonate chalk. That's what I thought at first, but it turns out that it's not calcium carbonate, and the best chalk that I found is Crayola's. And I haven't been able to duplicate their recipe, despite hours and hours wasted on form making. I did eventually come up with a good form design. I used to work as a form maker, by the way. But the problem with the form was, how do you make a bunch of them at the same time and reduce the amount of work that you invest in making them? And mostly the composition of this is just plaster of Paris. But I tried various additives and softeners and clays and everything that I could imagine in order to produce a good writing chalk, and I just couldn't come up with anything that rivaled what Crayola produces. So I did quite a few experiments with making a chalkboard. Start with the easiest one. This is just a piece of aluminum trim coil. And then I sanded, as that just said, with 400 grit sandpaper to kind of mar the surface a little bit. And it makes an easy to write on chalkboard, but it's hard to find a piece of coil stock that has a dark color like a chalkboard would have. But it also erases easy. That's option 1. Option 2 is a piece of glass which is painted black on the back and then sandblasted. This makes a really durable and pretty good chalkboard, but it's a little bit more difficult to erase. But all in all, I was pretty pleased with this. This is probably the best solution to the problem that I found. It's a piece of plexiglass, and I think this is just electrical tape now, but I would probably paint it and sandblast the back side, not the front. The front is just sanded with 400 grit. And this makes kind of a nice compromise between too easy to erase and too aggressive. So this, based on my limited experimentation, is probably the best solution I found. And I didn't try the paint. I wanted an alternative. Now this is the sandblasted glass, and this is Crayola chalk. This is a piece of dried clay that I hand dug myself, because believe it or not, I do pottery sometimes. And this is plaster of Paris chalk with nothing else in it. I would like to add, during the course of my learning about chalk, that one of the best things that you can do is, I started by dipping it in shellac to give it a candy shell, to make it, quote, dust-free, but I found that polyacrylic, like a water-based sealant, is a much, much better alternative. It gave it a really nice shell that kept the dust off of your fingers. So thank you so much for being interested, and thank you for tolerating my random rambling. Once it's cool, I can take it over to the grinder and use the... Ooh, it's still hot.